Yeah, we're most likely recording right now, so we'll just start, right? It's the Sustainiacs. Thank you everybody for tuning in once again. I am a Sustainiac. I am Michael Vincent. The other Sustainiac this week is Oren Zaslansky. Did I say that right?
Perfect. Yep.
Awesome. He is CEO and founder of Flock Freight, and also my guest today. My distinct honor of having you on today, sir. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. And I love the subject matter that we're going to be discussing today. I know it's something near and dear and something we're both passionate about.
It is, and it's one of those things that I think is becoming like a necessity of business, right? There's still deniers
Yeah.
out there, or people that I don't know if they're deniers more than just kind of hoping it goes away type of thing. But it's
Yeah.
becoming like a necessity that's there. But before we get into it and what is going on, because part of the conversation obviously is what you're doing there at Flock Freight, because what you're doing there is something that I believe is very, very, and you as well, and many others believe is very, very important to the subject at hand, sustainability. But the elevator pitch, please, sir, what are you guys doing there at Flock? I know it. You know it.
Yeah.
They might not. Let's tell them.
Yeah. So Flock Freight is doing algorithmic carpooling of less than truckload freight. So that's the kind of fancy way of saying it. What we're doing is we're taking all of these LTLs and partial shipments, these 4, 5, 6, 8 pallet shipments that would traditionally move on the LTL hub and spoke. And instead, we're creating a rideshare or a carpool solution where they move on a 53-footer. They move on a full truckload. So the customer can just seamlessly purchase their share of a truck. They may be buying a quarter of a 53-foot truckload, and we take care of the rest. We can give them a price right there in the instant. We make sure that freight is never going to move through any cross dock or LTL terminal, any form of the hub and spoke. It never comes off the truck and goes straight to their destination. The other component of what we're doing is, unfortunately, about every other truck we see on the highway is half empty. So it's kind of it's quite a well-known, albeit dirty, kind of pun intended on the sustainability side, secret within our industry that, if you have a half a truckload to ship, 13, 14 pallets, there's no solution for that. You're just going to go ahead and send that via full truckload. Whether you're using a broker or a carrier, you're going to send it out full truckload. And of course, you're paying for the whole thing, so that's economically wasteful. But it's also, from a sustainability standpoint, very wasteful because you're burning roughly the same amount of diesel fuel, whether the truck is half empty or completely full. Customers can come to us and just purchase the amount of space they need. And that's probably the most plain language way, I think, to explain what Flock does. How much space do you need? That's all you have to worry about. If you've got one pallet, if you've got 10, if you've got 50, don't worry about it. Flock will make sure to combine it with our other customers, move it in a truckload format, always in the highest quality, most sustainable manner.
So from a truckload standpoint, it's like a shared milk run almost, right? Type of thing.
Yep.
And from an LTL shipper standpoint, it's do you go down to like a single pallet, or is it more like those that would hit the the spot volume market contracts that we used to use, like at Roadway and stuff like that?
Yeah, we do support single pallet. I mean, technically, I can answer that question and say, yes, we support it. It's not our sweet spot. We'd be the first person to say one or two pallets is really hard. You could imagine on the truckload side, that would be in theory between 13 and 26 pickups and 13 to 26 deliveries.
Yeah, now you've got nationwide LTL basically, right?
Yeah. We're not there yet, but I would say our sweet spot is like 8 linear feet, for that customer that has 3 or 4 pallets, all the way up to 22 or 23 pallets. I think one of the coolest parts about what we do is for that shipper that's got 4 pallets going out, that's right down the middle for traditional LTL. They're shipping it into an OTIF, an on-time and full program with an Amazon or a Costco. It's a nightmare in traditional LTL services to hit those delivery deadlines, and they're punitively fined, when they miss a delivery.
Yeah, no doubt.
For the shipper that has 20 pallets, no one's having this conversation. At 18 pallets, it's give me a truckload rate. Give me a rate per mile. It's $1.50 mile plus fuel. Great. Flock comes in and says, no. Let's not do a rate per mile on 18 pallets. Let's talk about, you're just going to buy a share of the truck, and that's going to be less than the cost of the full truckload. You shouldn't pay for the whole truck. You should only pay for the amount that you use. And again, from a sustainability standpoint, we're going to fill that truck up with our other customers' freight. and make sure that the amount of diesel that's consumed is sort of amortized or prorated across the most amount of freight possible, so that ultimately we're producing less carbon on a per pallet basis.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It because when you talk about it, you hear a lot about, and there's certainly great efforts that are going on, like the consortium with JB Hunt, Convoy, Uber Freight. That Bill Driegert is leading over there with Shelley Simpson, et cetera. But it's attacking time, right? Time is money. We all know time is money, but time is also a waste of capacity, right? If we eliminate the wasted time of drivers sitting at the docks, we improve capacity. We also improve or reduce the amount of idle time, which is also a sustainability issue. But it's also that capacity. Because if I'm sitting here waiting at a dock for a appointment, or to be delivered, or to deliver or load unload, doesn't matter, maybe another piece of equipment has to move into that area to pick up the pickup moving today that I can't get to till tomorrow, and it screws up everything as far as the efficiencies, but also then the sustainability. In this sense, it's the same thing, because 30% empty going down the road is, I mean, it's even worse, because that's an entire load that most likely is going to have to move the next day, because nobody's got a solution like you've got. Right? Is that how I'm looking at it?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. If we keep it really simple and we just say the truck's half empty, because that's math everyone can do in their head.
Right.
We've got two trucks going down the road to effectively move what we only need one truck to do. We need one truck to move that
Yeah.
freight, two pickups, two deliveries, and we get everything there faster, by the way.
Yeah.
Truckload, I think everyone who's ever worked in the industry would affirm that truckload has higher quality, higher service levels than LTL. I don't think that's
Sure.
a scandalous statement to make, that the truckload
No.
on-time pickup, on-time delivery, damage rates, transit times,
12
loss and
years,
theft
12 years in
incidences.
LTL, 12
Yeah,
years in LTL. And I'll
it's
agree with that.
yeah, we're not maligning the fantastically talented and hardworking men and women that work in the LTL industry. What we're really doing is going after the mousetrap itself. The LTL hub and spoke is challenging. It's complicated. It's quite sophisticated in many ways, but it is what it is. It's got a ton of constraints and limitations on it. Every
Sure.
shipper, to the degree that they had 26 standard 4x4 pallets, would ship truckload, and they do. So much so that if they only have 22, they'll ship truckload. If they only have 18,
Mhm.
they'll ship truckload. If they have 12, they will ship truckload. That's what Flock's doing. Flock's saying to you, don't worry about how many pallets you have. We're going to ship it truckload. We call it shared truckload. I like to think of shared truckload as a double entendre. One is that the truckload is shared between you and our other customers, but I also like to think of it as you could purchase your share of a truckload. If you need a
Yeah.
quarter share, a third share, a half share, two-thirds share, we can bring that to you. And I think this is the key, in a totally automated, seamless fashion. A customer comes to us and says, I need a quarter share of a truck to pick up tomorrow in LA and be in Chicago 3 or 4 days later. Can you do it? And what's that going to cost? They can run that at flockfreight.com. They don't need human intervention. We're not saying,
Yeah.
pause, give me a second, let me pick up the phone and call a bunch of carriers and secure capacity and secure a price. We have enough data. We're applying enough data science and have built out a significant machine learning environment where we can predict the future. It's one of the hardest things we do, is for me to give you, the shipper, a price for pickup tomorrow in LA, a quarter share of a truck going to Chicago. I have to guess not only the underlying cost of the truck, but I have to guess how much of that truck I'm going to get sold in order to come
Mm.
up with a
Yeah.
price. Because if I think I'm only
Yeah.
going to sell you a quarter, and now I'm obligated to buy the whole truck on your behalf, that's problematic for me. I don't want to charge you a quarter
Yeah.
truck
Right.
and have that be the only thing on the truck. We're guessing into the near term future whether we're going to get half, two-thirds, three-quarters, or four-fourths of that truck sold. In a very dynamic fashion. We're
Wow.
sophisticated enough now and have enough scale where it isn't just getting 4 pickups in LA with 4 deliveries in Chicago. It might be 2 picks in LA, send the truck to Vegas, make another quarter pick in Vegas, send the truck up the road to Salt
That's
Lake,
what I was
make
going to
that
ask. Are
final
you are
pickup
you
there.
are you putting together, like, in an LTL world, like you got a head load basically going from LA to Chicago, and then you're dropping off
Yeah.
the back half of it in Vegas, and then picking up again in Vegas? I mean, are you
Yeah.
doing that type of
Yeah.
stuff as well? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really
And
that's very
it,
sophisticated, and that's really cool.
Yeah, it's very, very hard. I can tell you, it's the predictive nature of it. You need massive
Yeah.
data sets. in order to begin to make those kinds of predictions.
Right.
So, we recognize now, I think a lot of people who work in industry, I came out of industry, right? I started a truckload carrier when I was 21. I bootstrapped that, factored my receivables in order to finance it and make that
Sure.
business work, grew that to about 125 trucks running the lower 48. Then when I was 26, 27 years old, I started a traditional freight brokerage, buying and selling multimodal freight. I was doing that for 20 years before I started doing this. I'd like to think I understand that space well, and I understand bootstrapping and making payroll as well as anybody. And I think that for those of us that have worked in the industry for a long time, the concern or even criticism of Flock isn't that's a bad idea. It's, boy, that's really hard. I'm skeptical if
Yeah.
you could make that work. If you can make that work, that'll be amazing. Everyone's going to win.
Yeah.
The shipper is going to get
Yeah.
higher quality, lower cost. The carrier is going to be able to make more money. We can unlock a financial profile that's never been seen before, and we'll create a much, much more sustainable outcome as the only certified B Corp playing in freight. The only
Yeah.
one.
And
We're a public benefits corporation. It's a non-trivial, feat.
it really is, and beyond the ability when I mean, obviously you guys are figuring this out beyond the difficulties of doing what you're doing and figuring out that financial model, et cetera, et cetera. The benefits not only just to the shippers, right, because of the cost, and like you said before, there's all these other things. There's all the accessorial charges that can come, and there's the loss of freight. There's the damages that are inherent. The LTL, again, you send something LTL, it's crossing a minimum of 2 docks. If they're really, really, really good at what they're doing, maybe 3 docks on average, but it's most likely 4 or 5, especially if you're
Yep.
shipping over a weekend. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff that we're not going to get into right now that happens on a Saturday night cleanup at a break bulk dock in Toledo, Ohio. I've done it. It's absolutely crazy. But it also solves the capacity issues, right? For the industry as a whole by using less trucks to move. Like you said before,
Yes.
what do you say? Half the trucks going down the road are half empty or something like that. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
It's
So that's
absolutely insane.
25%, right? Half of a half is
Yeah.
25%. So that fundamentally means that 25% of the entire kind of, if you imagine all the trucking companies in the United States is like the US fleet, if we just sort of
Yeah.
aggregated all that and imagine it
Yeah.
that way, about 25% of the entire US fleet is underutilized. So, we're a marketplace with supply and demand. Demand is the manufacturer, the shipper who comes to us and they need services. And hey, can I buy a quarter truckload from you? And can you make that work? On the supply side of our marketplace is the carrier, the typically SMB, the small and medium sized trucking companies that come in. They come inbound to us. They come to flockfreight.com and they give us a little bit of that data. And that data is, I'm going to be in LA tomorrow. I'm going to be half empty. I need to be in Chicago 4 days from now. We didn't put that other half truckload in there, right? That came from some other customer. However they came by it, load board, broker, direct shipper relationship. It's inconsequential to us. As long as that load isn't sealed, because there's no shenanigans here. If it's a sealed trailer, then that's not where we're going to play. But if it's unsealed, not exclusive use, that carrier comes to us and they tell us that. And they would say, hey, I have 20 linear feet, 25 linear feet available starting tomorrow at 10 a.m., going to here and there, Chicago, New York, Pittsburgh, wherever. They tell us I can scale another 20,000 pounds. I can scale another 17,000 pounds. Do you have anything for me? And we instantly match against it because that's what we do. We're a big carpooling optimization capability that says, oh, sure, I've got 16.5 linear feet running that fits into your time sequencing. You've already got, to your point, the head freight. We call it in the nose of the trailer. We can load this on the tail of the trailer for you. It'll pick up after your first pickup. It will deliver prior to that first pickup that you have somewhere along the route. That is what's known as supplier surplus, right? That is surplus inventory that is going unused. That supplier has that available at little to no cost. We're helping carriers make more money than they've ever made before. We don't play the rate per mile game the way most freight intermediaries would, right? They would say, hey, it's $1.50 a mile. Well, I can give you $1.52 a mile, but I really want to pay you $1.48 a mile, in the traditional kind of, third party carrier shipper sort of, squeeze the penny. I mean, I like to imagine that the freight industry is such low margin. Everyone's sitting around a penny with a fork and knife out and they're like carving it up. Trying to carve up that 1 penny and say, I want my little quarter share of that penny because that's where all the profit lies. Whereas Flock
Yeah.
is saying, oh, okay, that's not really who and what we are. Hey, carrier, come to us. Oh, you've got 15 linear feet available, LA to Chicago. We can drop $1,500 worth of revenue in there. How does that sound?
Yeah.
It's pure
Yeah.
profit to the carrier. You
Pure
got to make an
profit.
extra pick, an extra drop. You're running that route. Maybe there's 100 extra out of route miles because you've got to swing a little right or a little left in order to get back on track. But it
Yeah.
becomes pure profit to that carrier. So carriers come inbound to Flock hoping to get full. We do something for them that no one's ever been able to do before. The entire industry on the truckload side has been configured empty or full. I'm a carrier. I am empty. Can you fill me up? Sure. Here's a full load. Or I am full, in which case I don't need any help until I am now empty. With Flock, a
Right.
carrier can come to us and say, I'm empty. And we say, great, no problem. We can get you full. 3 picks, 3 drops. They can come to us and say, I'm half empty. We can say, great, here's 2 picks, 2 drops. They can come to us 1/4 empty. And we could say, here's a single pick and a single drop. So we see
Yeah.
ourselves as not only a demand side optimization, but also a supply side optimization where we can help those carriers and those drivers put more freight on board along their existing routes and be much, much more profitable.
So much there's so many good things that come out of what you guys are doing. And just so the audience, everybody understands this, this we're not just talking about freight moving around here, right? We're talking about profitability of carriers, which is a really difficult thing at the present moment and always is
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
cyclical nature, right?
Yeah.
It may not, next year might be a better year and it's going to be great, but guaranteed there's going to be another year coming up real quick where it's going to be very tough again. Cause I've been doing this for 35 years. Oren's been doing this, I don't know how long, but a long time, maybe not 35 years. I'm not going to date you, but
Close.
long enough to understand this is cyclical in nature.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it's very, very important because it's 25% of the trucks running around empty in reality. When you look at carbon footprint and emissions, right? We're just running 25% of all the trucks around for no reason whatsoever, other than we're just not matching the freight the way we should be. Somebody finally said, "Hey, it's difficult, but I'm going to figure this out," and that's a great thing.
There's
Let me ask you
there's
this:
no
your
solution
journey
for it.
coming in. Go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead. You have a point.
Well, oh, sorry. I'll just say there's been no solution for it, right? So if
Right.
an enterprise customer, the Cokes and Pepsis of the world, run an RFQ annually, give or take, and for those of us that have seen it, and it's many of us have been working in the industry for years,
Sure.
the RFQ simply says if it's 26 linear feet or less, give me an LTL quote, give me an LTL number. If it's 26 linear feet or more, give me a rate per mile for a full truckload rate. And I think that
Right.
says everything right there. The most sophisticated at scale enterprise shippers, Kimberly-Clark, Amazon, the biggest shippers in the world, they're super smart. This is not a question
Yeah.
of like, are these dummies? The answer is like, absolutely not. These are incredibly smart, talented folks. There has never been a solution for it. If I have 30 linear feet, give me your best truckload rate. And that's what everybody's
Yeah.
competing for. Flock steps in and says, we don't want to give you a truckload rate for that. I mean, I guess we could, but what we want to do is give you a rate that's a share of a truckload.
Right. And many times that rate for that truckload carrier's got to be operating like maybe even single digits at times, right? The operating
Yeah.
ratio is
Oh,
pretty,
yeah,
because
yeah.
like you said, maybe it's a 50 miles, maybe it's an hour out of it, but that's certainly not a 90 or an 86 OR. That's got to be really, really cheap revenue that's going on there for them. Like you said, almost pure profit,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
beautiful for those guys. And then also the fact that you're reducing the number of empty miles that are running around the planet, which is a huge number. The other thing is the fuel. Like you said before, the fuel, it's not like an empty truck burns that significantly less fuel or half full truck, right? I mean, it's not like air where, every pound on there, they've got to recalculate based on the wind and the weight and all the other kind of stuff and try and figure it out. Correct. I mean, it's pretty much.
We've done, enormous number of studies on this, and it is very,
Yeah.
very incremental. 8 miles a gallon, can go up to 8.2 or something if you're running empty. So, maybe that half empty truck is 1 or 2% more fuel efficient. So, I guess that's good news, 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
But it's half empty.
Yeah.
Let's get that thing full, and it is
It's
twice
not
as fuel efficient
25%.
effectively.
Is what you're saying. It's not
No,
25%
yeah,
more efficient.
no, yeah, it's
That
1 or
would be a
2%.
different
It's
Yeah, that
it's a
would be a
tiny
different
fraction.
story. Yeah, you're still got 20. So let me ask you this, my friend. Original member of the LBC, maybe that's not true. I might have made that up. But how did you? Let's take you all the way back to the Long Beach crew. Your days working with Snoop Dogg back at the LBC. But no, seriously, from Long Beach to where you are right now, a lot of cool things in between, and a lot of cool things that you just started really doing over the last recent years, right? 3 to 5 years that are really interesting to me. Tell me about your personal journey, and why did it come into logistics, and why
Yeah.
was it a business opportunity, or was it like, I really want to help logistics, help the planet, or what was it? What was your journey?
So I grew up in San Diego, still live in San Diego. And my parents, my mom and my dad both were employees of a van line, a company called Four Winds Van Lines. It doesn't exist anymore, but think Mayflower or Unigroup, North American van lines. So they were on the household side, or what people affectionately call bed bugging, van line side. My mom worked in the freight forwarding divisions, which were doing international relocation specifically for the Department of Defense, Army, Navy, Air
Oh,
Force,
okay.
Marines, embassy services.
Makes
When
sense
I
in
was
San
in
Diego,
high
right?
school,
Military town.
yeah, tons of military, and this was a
Yeah.
relatively large company. I mean, it had a global footprint.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, she left the employment of that company and started her own freight forwarder out of the house. And so the original entrepreneur in my life was my mom, who was already probably in her 40s at the time, married, had a mortgage, had two kids in high school, and bills to pay and the whole thing. And so she'd get up at 4 in the morning and she'd start cranking on her LOIs with agents and working with what's called the SDDC and Transcom, and getting all the filings in place for the military household good program, and starting a freight forwarder out of the home. She'd do that from 4 to 7. Then she'd get dressed, go to work, because you got to pay the bills. Just the practicality of
Wow.
entrepreneurship. It's a lot less glamorous than people think.
Oh yeah,
And then
that's true.
she'd come home from work at 5 or 6 p.m. and do the same thing, crank out another 2, 3, 4 hours of work. And she did that for about 18 months until the business was really ready to launch and she had all the regulatory filings in place. She then resigned, completely separated from that firm, and got to work on her own. Within about 3 or 4 years, she'd grown the business enough to need office space, and started hiring employees, and had profitability, had cash flow. So at this point, I'd left to go to college. I went to school in Long Beach State. I was a volleyball player, and Long Beach continues to have an excellent
Oh, nice.
men's volleyball program. So went and played volleyball at Long Beach, which was really what pulled me into that program in that town. And during those years, my dad leaves Four Winds and starts a military freight forwarder, doing basically the same thing. My mom was more internationally focused freight forwarder, and my dad more domestically focused freight forwarder.
Mm-hmm.
So when I come out of college, with my poli sci degree, thinking for 2 seconds I'd go to law school, which obviously I didn't. I don't think that was the right path for me. I had witnessed two entrepreneurs in the freight industry. My sister during this time drops out of college, and she's a fashion designer and decides to start a clothing company, making T-shirts for like the action sports kind of surf skate, SoCal kind of thing, with an eye
Yeah.
toward women's wear within action sports. So I'm the only not entrepreneur in my family at age
Right.
21.
Right.
And so it's not that there was any pressure to do it. Rather, when you grow up in that environment, you just think it's super normal. It's not strange to you to say, well, I'm just going to start a company. And in my case, having spent my entire childhood listening to flatbeds and ocean bills of lading and LTL, it was the most normal thing in the world. And 48 footers, right, back then. It was the most
Yeah.
normal thing in the world to me to want to start a company. So I worked for my mom in her freight forwarder for about 3 months. And I guess there was some sense of come to work in the family business. It wasn't for me. I love my parents, have a great relationship with them. They're absolute mentors to me. I've learned just so much from them along the way. I think I just wanted to do something on my own. That's what they had done. I
Yeah.
wanted to build something on my own. So I started a truckload carrier. The reality is in 1996, so I'll go ahead and date myself. You just didn't need much, right? Operating authority, post a bond, insurance, enroll your
Yeah.
drivers in a mandatory drug and alcohol testing program, and you're kind of off to the races. Got signed up with a factoring firm out of Alpharetta, Georgia, Action Capital, and I'd fax over the invoice. And they would make 90% of it available to me right away. My all-in cost at that time was like 21, 22% to borrow. I mean, it was significantly expensive to say the least. But
Wow.
it capitalized the business and it gave me a chance to get up and running. And so,
Yeah.
moved back from Long Beach back to San Diego. It was the Snoop Dogg era in the early '90s, literally, and
Well, yeah,
I
I was
guess sort of
watching.
the
I was
rest is
like, okay,
history.
so you got Sublime and you got Snoop Dogg, you got
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
LBC
yeah.
happening and stuff. I'm like, you were right in the mix of it, man.
We saw, me and my volleyball teammates, we saw Sublime before Sublime was Sublime, in the local
Yeah, that's
bars
what
and
I
the
was
local
hoping to hear. I
clubs.
was like, because
Yeah, in the early
they're one of
90s.
my heroes,
Absolutely.
or was one of my heroes, anyways, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely incredible, and Snoop really was coming up in that era. So it was kind of a cool place on the music scene at that point. And then back to San Diego, and I just started the one company, and I guess I've never stopped pedaling since.
That is really, really cool. And as you move forward, and I get it totally, because you grow up in a household where nothing wrong with it, but the parents working for a company, and you get that becomes your reality, right? But then jumping to entrepreneurship like I did is totally foreign to anything that I ever experienced growing up, right? So it's a totally different thing, and I totally understand what you're saying there with having that 21 years old. No, I'm not going to work for my mom. I'm going to go do my own thing type of stuff. Not that there's anything bad with working for your mom, but doing your own thing, putting your own mark on the world is important. And you got into what was your childhood vernacular, right? It was like you said, you
Yeah.
grew up listening to 48s, pups, 53s, Jiff locks, yard dogs. You probably heard all that stuff, and and knew what all that stuff is. So as you're growing up and you're moving into this stuff, you get involved with YPO and you get involved with the World Economic Forum, and you're with Wall Street Journal now, one of the recent ones, right? In their I guess it's their owners club, their CEOs club, but the World Economic Forum and the YPO are more. They have more of a okay. You're in business and you own your own business and you're an executive and you're moving this stuff, but it's also very much an altruistic ESG kind of promotional thing, right? And building that through the entire world. Why did you get involved with those type of things? Was it purely for the business end of it, or are you starting to start to see this budding? Hey, we have to work together and solve this issue around the world.
So I joined YPO back in, I think, 2006, very, a long time ago. And I qualified based on the trucking company, the carrier I had, and the brokerage company that I had started and was CEO. YPO has these qualification requirements of like 50 employees and I don't know, $10 or $20 million in revenue or something like that. And
You
being
have to
a
be
and being
younger
a
than
CEO,
45 years old too. I looked it up. I was
and you
like,
have to be younger than 45 to join. I was, I think 30,
did they
31
kick
years
you
old
out
or
when
something
you
at the
when you reach
time.
45? Are you out at 45, or you get
No,
grandfathered in?
no, the way it works is you have to join before you turn
Yeah,
45.
I get it.
But
Yeah.
you stay a member until you're 50. And then at 50, they do sort of hand you off to a complementary organization. It used to be called WPO. Now it's actually all still just called YPO. But it's a lifelong organization. I think the key is you do have to become a member before you turn 45.
Gotcha.
Maybe that'll
Gotcha.
change. I don't know. Why did I join that? I had met a mentor. There's a program in San Diego called the Chairman's Roundtable. Absolutely fantastic. I admit, and I feel bad in retrospect, was a little skeptical that there was this free mentorship program with, in some cases, retired, but not always, super senior former executives, former CEOs who just want to meet up and comers and help mentor them in their path. And that's exactly what it turned out to be, just a fantastic program of men and women that want to help the next generation. So I had a mentor there, a guy named Bill Carpenter, great guy. We worked together for 3 months, kind of helped me think about my business at a much higher level. I mean, I was, again, 30 years old and I'd started 2 businesses, so I had some experience, but I was starting to achieve some scale and needed to start working on the business, not just in the business. Bill said to me, "Hey, why aren't you in YPO? It's full of people that are kind of like you and are thinking about similar things." I said, "Yeah, I've never even heard of it before." So he made an introduction, ended up joining. Why did I join? I think it was just an opportunity to meet other executives trying to build businesses and an
Yeah.
opportunity to learn from one another. It was just,
Yeah.
really kind of
Great
simple.
networking, right?
Yeah, that's what it ends up being. Is it is great networking. You meet a lot of folks all over the world. It's also though very connected. So YPO has a dimension that's pretty different, I think, than a lot of other peer groups, and that's that it's meant to be very sort of intimate and transparent. You share your lives, your whole life. So it's actually very common to do an update that is business, family, and personal. So a lot of people are
Oh,
surprised
okay.
by that, but you don't just walk into your monthly meeting with 6, 7, 8 other people and update on the highs and lows of your business and professional life. That's certainly meant to be a full 1/3 of it. But another third is meant to be what's going on with my family. And then a third is meant to be what's going on with me, the human. Um, YPO certainly led to a lot of other introductions. I met two of my co-founders through YPO, one as a business school academic, the other as a tech entrepreneur. For whatever it's worth, I've never thought of networking as an opportunity to meet people and further my career or further my agenda. I think of networking as, boy, there's a room full of really smart, interesting people in here, and I'd love to have interesting conversations with these people and just hear their story and maybe get to share a little bit of mine. And sometimes there's a little magic comes out of that. You feel a spark and you say, hey, you're really cool. Can we grab some coffee sometime? Can we grab our breakfast sometime? I'd like to deep dive even further.
Yeah.
YPO has been great
It's
in
it,
that regard.
it seems like the best things in life, personally and professionally, come when you just open yourself up to, hey, this is a really cool thing. Let's just go do this. And you're not really seeking to extract something from it, right? Or if you're seeking
I
to
think so.
input something into it, that's when really the best benefits seem to come out of it. When you're working with and a member of the World Economic Forum,
Yeah.
right? I mean, one of the things there is to bring
Yep.
up the economies around the world. So, we to improve the social standings and also the environmental standings, the governance, social, and the whole ESG model, right, is involved in the efforts there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. World Economic Forum, or WEF, as I suppose people call it, and in particular, going to the annual conference in Davos, Switzerland. It can have a lot of reputations, right? So I'm happy to speak to it. On the one hand, people would say, is this sort of the Illuminati moving power crystals of the world, and are nefarious acts going on there? And I would tell you, not that I saw. What I saw was a bunch of men and women passionate about the things that they're passionate about. So Flock and as a member, we're in the mobility and supply chain track, as you would imagine, and also simultaneously in the sustainability track. And they do kind of break you into tracks. So there's tracks there for manufacturers, and there's tracks there for people working on fintech, and all sorts of different things. The folks that I have met there are giving their time and their money and their passion and their talents to helping to make the world a better place. As corny as that is, they're getting together, they're sharing best practices, they're talking about, hey, can we agree on a biofuel in Europe that's going to make sense and meet government standards? Can we agree on a motor that's going to work? What does charging infrastructure look like? Do we have enough power in the grid to actually do this in a way that's going to sincerely be green? Unfortunately, a lot of electrification is accomplished by dirty energy, by burning coal, not by clean energy, by solar or wind or hydro. So trying to really have the right conversations. The people I've met there and the opportunities I've had to engage, I just try to treat it on the face of it as, wow, I'm in a room with some really smart, talented
Yeah.
folks. And I've got a voice in this room and a responsibility that comes along with it to further the global agenda of sustainability and making sure that what's Flock's unique contribution. And I see it as twofold. I see one is we pull freight, we take half empty trucks, we fill them up. Like very directly, we're helping to reduce greenhouse gas. The indirect way in which we can contribute is we have to talk about it. We have to drive a conversation. I was fortunate to be on a panel there, hosted by Salesforce, and it was all about sustainability and various points of view. And I was the freight guy, right? Make no bones about it. There were other points of view on the panel, but I was the sort of supply chain freight guy talking about how we contribute to fossil fuel and greenhouse gas, and therefore how we can contribute to the solution. And something that I'm really convinced of is that we have to make sustainability profitable and frictionless. That unfortunately, a lot of business leaders, they want to do the right thing. I really haven't run into that person who says, I want to do the wrong thing. Like, I just, does that human exist? Sure, probably.
So yeah,
But that's not
Oren, I
most
was going to
people.
bring this up. I was going to bring this up because you said on LinkedIn, one of your quotes was, "When 4 out of 5 CEOs have decided sustainability is bad for business, I believe we should rethink business as usual with our planet's
Yeah.
future on the line." Right, and I agree with that
Yeah.
100%. And I know you're not saying that 80% of the CEOs want to kill the environment. They just
No,
don't
correct.
understand, or they don't see how it can be in a good business model and remain profitable. Right?
Yeah, I don't want to place blame anywhere. I'm gonna put the responsibility, believe it or not, of getting on the right side of that on the hands of people like me, the suppliers to, let's just say, the Fortune 500 CEOs. The
Okay.
Fortune
All right.
500 CEOs have obligations, they have fiduciary obligation to their cap table, to their shareholders. I think that, like, look, let's just be grown-ups about that and understand that money matters. I think that we all need to get very comfortable holding sustainability and profitability as both being super important. I think that the best way that we can create massive, fast, sticky traction toward much better sustainability outcomes is to make it, quite frankly, easy and profitable, frictionless and profitable. And I think Flock Freight does that right down the middle. I think that when we go to an enterprise shipper, a Fortune 500 shipper, and we say, we think we can save you $50 million right off your bottom line. You're going to spend $50 million less because we can take not all, but some big percentage of your half empty trucks and charge you for a half empty truck and not a full truckload. We're going to make it easy for you and profitable for you because we're returning those dollars back to their operating income, back to EBITDA, back to their bottom line. And at the same time, in doing so, we're carbon neutralizing the movement of that freight. We're dramatically reducing the amount of carbon that's going to go into the environment because we're going to take their half truck and we're going to match it up with another Fortune 500 enterprise shipper's half truck. And they're both going to get the benefits of only paying for the amount of truck that they need and know that they're dramatically supporting a much, much more sustainable outcome. That pitch, so to speak, that value prop is incredibly resonant. We don't get pushback from those shippers. It's much more, okay, how do we implement you? We've never worked with
Yeah.
anything like you before. Our software isn't used to buying by the pallet or by the foot or half trucks. Our software is used to, give me an RPM and put it in. And we understand why we're fractions of an RPM, right? And we just want to walk in
Yeah.
and say,
Yeah.
how much do you have? We want you to buy along the spectrum from 1 pallet to 26. If we keep it simple, they hear that and they go, yes, yes, yes. This makes complete and total sense. That being said, it can be challenging, to implement that. All the people we talk to are looking for ways to make the right decision. By the way, when I say profitable, I'm being a little bit figurative. Bring the Fortune 500 a solution whereby they can do the right thing from a sustainability standpoint and it's cost neutral. Just if it doesn't
Yeah.
cost them more, they'll
Yeah.
do it in a second. In a second,
Right.
they'll do it.
Well, I mean, even if they can do it, if it's fiscally cost neutral on P&L, right? The P&L lines all line up back, and they're still there. It's still profitable in that. In these days, you've got to show certain things, otherwise, you're not going to attract and retain that talent, and you're not going to
Oh yeah.
win those awards and those RFQs and RFPs, like you said, if you can't prove those sustainability efforts. So yeah, I mean, if you get one that's cost neutral and can do it cost neutral, I think that's just a bonus on top of the other benefits from doing it because you have to do work that way, right? I mean, you guys just put out at the end of March, you put out your Flock Freight annual shipper survey. I believe was in Business Wire, right? And I think a lot of the data that's in there, if we can dig into it a little bit, really calls into question the mindset from those 4 out of 5 CEOs that think that it can't be a profitable thing, right? I mean, there's just a ton of wasted money. We've already talked about it in the very important work that you're doing. But in all reality, I'm sure you would agree, it's a very small fraction of what can be done across all industry, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no two bones about it. To the degree that we, as the solution providers on the Flock side, continue to approach industry and say, we need you to pay a whole bunch more money to do the right thing, we're going to have incremental gains. There'll be gains. There are always those customers out there, fellow B Corps, that will pay a premium to do the right thing. That is a minority of stakeholders, though, without any judgment. It just is. It's a minority of stakeholders out there. That'd be the 20%, right? But on the 80% side, which is our opportunity to make non incremental, to make step function improvements to the climate, We have to find a way to be cost neutral or to provide cost savings. Supplier surplus is a real phenomena, right? Supplier surplus is the idea of Airbnb, that I own a condo and I'm going out of town on vacation. My condo's sitting empty. Why don't you rent it? And if we do this
Yeah.
just right, you pay less than a hotel. So that's good. And we didn't build my condo and consume resources just so I could rent it to you. We built my condo and consume resources because I need a place to live. And I think that for the most part, we feel that that's acceptable. But by the way, if we don't have to keep building hotel after hotel after hotel because you can just rent my place, and in theory, my place is full with some human benefiting from shelter 365 days a year, then we're going to be much more efficient as a system. That's
Yeah.
supplier surplus. Uber rides and Lyft rides, they fluctuate a little bit on this because there's certainly a group of professional drivers that do it full time. That's not necessarily supplier surplus, although it's a much needed opportunity to create income. Certainly, though, for the person that does it as a side hustle, that's where I love those businesses above all else, where, I own a Prius, I drive to work every day. I kind of do my Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, so to speak. And then on the weekends, I'd like to make a little extra cash. I've got this very fuel efficient hybrid car. Why don't I offer you a ride? You give me $10 and help me, pay my bills or put my kid through school.
Yeah.
That's a surplus opportunity. And it's much more efficient than putting additional taxis or town cars on the road. Anytime we can find a solution of supplier surplus where there's excess inventory that is being underutilized, 25% of the US fleet is empty. I mean, another way to visualize it, and I think you spoke to it earlier, is just imagine 1 in every 4 trucks on the road is empty and burning diesel fuel and running back and forth.
Just driving around for the hell of it.
Hundreds of thousands of miles a year. I mean, you have to put that into context, right? Like 150,000 miles a year is like average. It's not even that great.
Well, you just
200,000 plus miles. That's
and
pretty good.
and the number of trucks that are on the road, dude, and everything else that's going on with it. You got to spend all that. There's all the greenhouse gases and everything to build that extra 25%. Trucks, tires, trailers, all that stuff that's going with it. That's moving around empty. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. In your study, though, one of the things that you said in your study was that today's $7 trillion supply chain industry works backwards, right? So,
yeah,
what does that mean, and what does that mean to what you're doing there at Flock? I think I have an idea because I think there's another quote that I could say right now that would give it away, but I'll let you handle it.
It's a little bit esoteric, a little bit conceptual, but it dawned on me during the Flock journey that I'm very much still on. It dawned on me that the industry, whether you're a broker or carrier, but all of those men and women involved in the $7 trillion worth of providing the solution to move something, right, from A to B, we put all the constraints on the customer. We're the ones who tell the customer how big the box is. We tell them when the box is going to go. We tell them when the vessel is going to sail, when the aircraft's going to take off. We tell them what the optimal break points are for shipping. If it's traditional TL, it's 1 to 4 pallets, then it's over length, and it's going to go volume and over dimensionalize it. Or if it's truckload, it's got to be, if it's 26 feet, if it's half a truck, it's going to go truckload. Whatever the constraints are, all the capacitation, all the constraints actually come from us, the industry. So much so that I believe that the we'll just call them manufacturers, the shippers of the world, we have them bent around our axle, pun intended. We tell them what the rules are, and they have to play within it. And it's so pervasive, it's so entrenched that nobody questions it. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got to buy a whole truck, and I'm only got only 13 pallets, but I have to pay for 26. It is what it is. That's just the way truckload works. And sometimes truckload is more efficient for me, and sometimes it's way less efficient, whether I'm thinking about cost or sustainability. What we're trying to do is fundamentally rethink infrastructure and say, no, it should be the other way around. This is the backwards part. I, as a supplier, I mean, we know this in every industry. This isn't a freight thing. As a supplier, I should be going to the customer. The customer's always right? I should be able to go to the customer and say, what do you need? Okay, sure. I'll sell that to you. And by the way, you probably want a low price? Got it. You probably want high quality? Fair. Oh, you want the most sustainable way of doing it too? That makes sense. We should be able to sell them what they need, when they need, the way that they need it, in a way that makes them more profitable and with very low to no friction. We need to make it easy to do business with. And that's unfortunately what our industry hasn't done. And there's all sorts of great reasons for it. Actually, when I was in at the WEF meeting in Davos, in a supply chain meeting, we had, probably not appropriate to name names, but let's just say titans would not be an overstatement. Titans of particularly global shipping, like the actual the steamship lines and the manufacturers, and the really the biggest of the big. And somebody made a joke of a very well-known name in the industry made a joke that said, we're trying to agree on new fuels for our vessels within the context of Europe and the standards that have been imposed there by, I think it's 2025 or 2030. And they said, it took us 30 years to agree on the box. How are we going to agree on a fuel? So the box was seen as a tremendous innovation, right? The steamship container was seen as a tremendous innovation because it isn't just the box; it's the chassis that they ride on. It's the rail pigs. It's the crane that moves the box at the port.
Yeah.
It's the frameworks used on the vessels. I mean, and then how are we going to price all these things? And the big innovation becomes high cube, but that the standard had to be agreed upon, not just within a few different companies, but many industries, from the rail to the ports, to the vessels, to the manufacturers, all had to agree that this was a standard. And they were right to do so. It really, truly, I'm not hating on that. It was a massive step function level of innovation and efficiency that we all benefit from. I'm simply saying it's 2023. We have modern compute capabilities, modern analytics, machine learning, generative AI now. We have the ability to see the future. This stuff is unbelievable. Play with ChatGPT, play with GPT-4. It will blow your mind. Ask it to write novel content for you to help promote your podcast. I mean, it's somewhere between thrilling and terrifying. The technological tools and capabilities that are available to us now are not what they were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They just aren't. We need to take advantage of them. So there's a world in which now I think we have to flip this whole thing over. It is backwards. And instead of saying to the shipper, you will bend to my will, the carrier, I'm going to tell you, what time it is. And instead flip that over and say, hey, what do you need? Highest quality, lowest cost, most sustainable fashion. You don't need to worry about when vessels sail or how full a truck needs to be efficient or optimal. Bring it to us, bring it to Flock, and we will match everything up in a totally seamless and transparent fashion and make sure that it's always being carbon neutralized, always giving you the highest quality, in fact, higher quality than you've experienced before, and at the same time in a way that helps you be more profitable.
That's excellent stuff. So, Oren, I really want to thank you for being on the show today. I really, it's taken us some time to get our schedules correct and do this, but it's really been worth it. And I'd love to have you on again sometime in the future. Is there anything we should be looking forward to with Flock Freight?
Well, we're in the scaling, getting more efficient phase. We're thrilled to be exactly where we are. We spoke about it earlier in your show that the truckload spot market couldn't be lower than it is. It is horrific, and sure that makes the business climate really challenging. But I'd remind your viewers that my first business was a truckload carrier. I learned this industry from the men and women driving trucks in this country. There is no harder working, more essential, valuable cohort or persona in this world than truck drivers. They're starving right now, and I agree it's the cycles and it bullwhips back and forth. I really wish everybody could just sort of say everybody needs to make a living. We need these men and women desperately. You and I don't eat if somebody doesn't drive a truck to deliver that loaf of bread and those eggs to the grocery store. Many viewers, I'm sure, sophisticated enough to know that don't get lost in these gross wages. They hear about a truck driver makes $200,000 a year. What are they crying about? No, they don't. They got to make a truck payment. They got to buy fuel. They got to buy insurance. They're lucky to keep 70. And if 70 still sounds like a pretty good wage, they haven't seen their family in 8 weeks. Quite frankly,
you got to understand the intricacies of that business because they're truly
on the road.
And
and the worst part about it is treated poorly, not treated with the respect that they deserve. So
no, they definitely are.
It is something that is really, really important to me is making sure that group of men and women are recognized, making sure that they get the respect first and foremost that they deserve, and making sure that they have the income earning opportunity that everybody in this country wants, if not expects, as an opportunity to work hard and financially benefit for that hard work. So we're scaling significant new products and capabilities on the carrier side. to make sure that these carriers can come to us and we can fill them up and help them make more money. And again, I'm not wordsmithing things here saying a slightly higher rate per mile. I'm saying that carrier's been paid, let's just say it's $1.50 plus fuel on a lane, LA to Chicago. They have 20 linear feet available, 15,000 pounds available. We're going to stick another $1,200 worth of revenue on board that carrier. They're going to make more money hauling for us than they can anyone else in the world. They can make more money working for us than they do picking up a full load directly from a shipper, which I don't think any kind of third party has ever been able to make that claim before. And it's because we're accessing the supplier surplus. There's wasted space in there. We're putting freight on board.
So, Oren, let's end with this then, because I love what's going on. How does a carrier say, you know what, this sounds awesome? How do I sign up for this unbelievable Flock Freight thing? Is it an app? How do I get involved?
Yeah, just flockfreight.com. Go to flockfreight.com. There's a link there for carriers, for drivers. It'll take you down the rabbit hole. Obviously, there's a risk, vetting process and all the usual onboarding gates. Once those are complete, they enter into it's very sophisticated kind of eBay style auctions with buy it now. Give us the data, allow us to optimize. But again, we're not auctioning off full truckloads where it's just trying to get to the lowest RPM. It's a race to the bottom. Right? That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we're going to ask questions nobody else asks and says, hey, you probably have some empty space on board, right? Not all the time, but some of the time. How much empty space do you have? Okay, cool. You got a little bit of empty space. We're going to give you a shot. And we think of it more, we're going to make you an offer. We're going to say to you, okay, now we sort of understand who you are and where you're going and what your supplier excess inventory looks like. All right, here's 10 linear feet. I mean, I know you have 20 feet available. Sorry, we don't have that today, maybe tomorrow, but I do have 10 feet available and it pays $700, not the $1,400 that if we had 20, but it seems to us that that's right down your lane and it's going to make you profitable. I mean, you can imagine because of how thin margin the industry is, they pick up a quarter of a truck for Flock, a third of a truck for Flock. The incremental profit margin they capture is greater than the margin on the whole load. They make their money when they work for Flock. So the big what's next for us is just continuing to scale out the supply side, helping them be much, much more profitable. On the demand side, we're pooling freight, shared truckload. We love it. There's no pivots, no dramatically newer, different products and services. We love what we're doing because our customers tell us they love what we're doing, and we're just going to keep scaling it and making it better.
Absolutely love it. I love what you're doing there. You heard it here. Go thank a truck driver because they really do make the economy in our lives run and make it much better. In case you were asleep through the entire pandemic, you probably need to know that, right? Oren, thank you so much for being on, my friend. Peace and love to you and peace and love to everybody. We've been to Sustainax. Catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, brother.